The whispering shadows. Jackson Thorne had seen enough broken souls pass through Epsilon 7 to recognize the signs. The way they hunched their shoulders, how their eyes darted at every shadow, the trembling hands that never quite steadied. War refugees. All carried the same invisible wounds, regardless of species. But this one was different. She'd arrived on the last transport from the Kepler Reach. After the stellar collapse had swallowed 3 entire systems. Like the others, she wore the standard-issue gray cloak that marked her as displaced, but where? Most refugees clustered together for comfort. She remained alone. Always alone. Station log, day 47, Jackson muttered into his recorder, watching the security feeds from his cramped office. New arrivals from Transport 7 have integrated well, except for subject. What's her designation again? He scrolled through the manifest. Subject 847. No registered name, no species identifier, no family connections. Ghost in the system. Woman on his screen moved through the station's lower levels like smoke, working the mineral processors with mechanical precision. Her hood never fell back, her face never lifted toward the cameras. In 3 weeks, he'd never heard her speak a single word. That changed on night shift rotation? Jackson was making his rounds when the power grid fluctuated. Not unusual. Epsilon 7 ran on salvage tech, but the timing made him nervous. The hegemony. Patrol ships had been sniffing around the outer markers, and tensions were high. Its backup generators hummed to life, casting the corridors in amber emergency lighting. He heard it singing, not the harsh clicking of Valorian throat songs or the melodic trills favored by the Centauri. This was something else entirely, something that made the hair on his arms stand up. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, but the language ... Jaxon pressed himself against the wall, following the sound through the maintenance shafts therein. A forgotten storage bay sat Subject 847. Her hood had fallen back, revealing pale skin and dark hair that caught the emergency lights like spun shadow. She was young, barely out of adolescence by most species standards, but her voice carried centuries of grief. Requiem aeternam, Donna Eyes Domini, she whispered between verses. At Lux Perpetua, Lucite Eyes. Jackson's blood turned to ice. He knew those words. Every officer in the Peace Corps studied extinct civilizations, and the Human Archive was mandatory reading. But humans had been gone for 500 years. Their homeworld was dust, their colonies absorbed into other empires or lost to time. Yet, here was this slip of a girl, singing funeral prayers in perfect classical Latin. She sensed his presence and turned. For a moment, their eyes met hers, wide with terror, his with disbelief. Then she was gone, moving with impossible speed through the shadows, leaving only the echo of ancient words hanging in the stale air. Jackson stood frozen, his mind racing. Protocol demanded he report anything unusual to Sector Command, but something held him back. The fear in her eyes wasn't just refugee trauma. It was the look of someone carrying a secret too dangerous to share. He made a decision that would change everything instead of filing a report. Jackson Thorne erased the security footage from that night and began his own investigation into Subject 847. Because if she really was what he thought she was, then everything they knew about the galaxy's history was a lie. And lies that big usually meant someone very powerful wanted them buried. Fragments of memory dar. Mira Valdez had built her reputation on impossibilities, while other xenolinguists focused on contemporary dialects. She specialized in dead languages, the fossilized remnants of civilizations lost to war, plague, or time. Her cramped laboratory aboard the research vessel Mendel's Dream was a graveyard of extinct cultures, filled with holographic texts and neural pattern recordings from species that no longer drew breath. So when Jackson Thorne's encrypted message reached her 3 days after the incident on Epsilon 7, she almost deleted it as another crackpot theory. Almost. Claims to have audio of spoken classical Latin, she read aloud to her assistant, a spider-like arachnoid named Quillix, probable human descendant, requesting immediate consultation. Quillix's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Humans again? The security chief watches too many historical dramas. But Mira's fingers hesitated over the delete key. She'd spent 12 years studying the human archive, piecing together fragments of their culture from scattered ruins and corrupted data cores. If there was even a microscopic chance, patch me through to Station Epsilon 7, she said. Priority. Channel 48 hours later, the Mendel's Dream docked at the remote mining station. Jackson met her at the airlock, his weathered face grim with exhaustion. Dark circles shadowed his eyes and his hands trembled slightly, the signs of someone who hadn't slept properly in days. "Thank you for coming," he said, leading her through sterile corridors. "I wasn't sure you'd believe me." "I don't," Mira replied honestly. "But I'm curious enough to waste a few days proving you wrong." He took her to his office and sealed the door. The audio file he played was barely 3 minutes long, but those 3 minutes changed everything Mira thought she knew about the universe. The voice was young, female, and heartbreakingly pure. But it was the language that made Mira's breath catch. Not just Latin perfect, ecclesiastical Latin. It's pronounced with the exact tonal variations documented in pre-Exodus human religious texts. Texts that had been classified and sealed away in the deepest archives of the Galactic Library. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, playing the recording for the 4th time. The girl subject 847. She was singing in the lower levels during a power outage. Jackson pulled up security footage, showing a hooded figure moving through the shadows. "I've been watching her since. She's not like the others." Mira leaned forward, studying the grainy image. "Have you tried to approach her directly?" "She runs. Every time. But I've noticed patterns. She works the night shifts, avoids crowds, and..." He hesitated. "She reacts to things. Human things. Yesterday, I played some old Terran classical music in the common area. She stopped dead, started crying, then disappeared for 6 hours. The pieces were falling into place in Mira's mind, forming a picture so impossible she could barely comprehend it. I need to see her tonight." They found Subject 847 in Processing Bay 7, working alone under the harsh industrial lights. She wore standard station coveralls, but they hung loose on her small frame. Her movements were efficient, practiced, but there was something else, a grace that spoke of different gravity, different evolutionary pressures. Mira stepped into the light and spoke carefully, her voice gentle. "Avino Puella, Quomodo te vocas." The effect was instantaneous. The girl spun around, her hood falling back to reveal a face that belonged in a Renaissance painting: pale skin, dark eyes, features that were undeniably, impossibly human. But it was her expression that broke Mira's heart. Pure, desperate hope, warring with abject terror. Tu es sapiens? The girl whispered in perfect Latin. "You are wise? You understand?" Mira nodded slowly. "Intellego sum Mira, tu quid vocaris." "I understand. I am Mira. What are you called?" Tears streamed down the girl's face as she spoke, her voice breaking with emotion. "Ego sum Kira, some ... some Ultima. I am Kira. I am. I am the last human in the galaxy," had just revealed herself to a woman who'd spent her life studying the echoes of her dead civilization. And Mira realized with growing dread that keeping this secret might be the most dangerous thing she'd ever attempted. Because if Kira really was human, then someone had been lying about humanity's extinction for 500 years, and lies that old usually had very powerful guardians. The Silent Watcher's Elder Corinth had not spoken aloud in 17 years. Among the Silent Watchers, communication flowed through neural interfaces and genetic memory patterns and Chanchan technologies salvaged from humanity's dying breath. But today, as he stood before the holographic altar in the deepest chamber of Haven Station, he broke his vow of silence. "She is found," he whispered, his voice cracking like old parchment. The words echoed in the vast cathedral carved from living rock, where 10,000 human embryos slept in cryogenic suspension. The other elders materialized from the shadows, not human themselves, but the descendants of those who had sworn binding oaths to protect Earth's children. There was Tamora of the extinct ethereal republic, her translucent form flickering with ancient grief. Beside her stood Nexus 7, a synthetic being whose crystalline body housed the uploaded consciousness of humanity's greatest scientists. And finally, Grimjaw, the massive Ursinian whose people had been humanity's first and most loyal allies before the Great Silence fell. How long? Smara's mental voice carried the weight of centuries. Corinth accessed the quantum entanglement network that connected all Watcher stations across the galaxy. Data flowed through his consciousness security footage. Linguistic analysis, biometric scans stolen from a remote mining station. 3 solar cycles since first contact. The humans Thorn and Valdez have made contact with Preservation Unit. Kiranine. Kiranine Nexus 7 processed the designation. Signed to the Kepler Reach Preservation Site. One of our most successful integration subjects. Grimjaw's massive form shifted. His bear-like features creased with worry. The Kepler site was lost. Stellar collapse. How did she survive? The answer came from the deepest archives, data streams that only the eldest Watchers could access. Consciousness dove into memories not his own, inherited through genetic modification and neural grafting. He became, for a moment, Dr. Alina Vasquez, chief architect of the Preservation Protocol, speaking from 5 centuries past. If natural disaster threatens a preservation site, activate Emergency Protocol 7. The subjects must reach designated sanctuary points, even if it means exposure to the greater galaxy. Better discovery than extinction. She followed her programming, Corinth said, returning to his own awareness. But now she is exposed, and others are beginning to take notice. The Watchers had been born from humanity's greatest act of desperation. When the 3 Empire War reached Earth's solar system, when humanity's colonies fell one by one to superior firepower and ruthless politics, a secret cabal of human leaders made an impossible choice. They would fake their own extinction. The plan was audacious in its scope. Entire human populations were secretly evacuated to hidden stations built in dead space between systems. The most genetically diverse specimens were placed in stasis, while others were given new identities and integrated into alien societies as refugees from destroyed worlds. Earth itself was rendered uninhabitable through controlled ecological collapse, its surface scarred to suggest orbital bombardment to the galaxy. Humanity simply vanished, another casualty of imperial ambition. But the price of this deception was enormous. The Watchers, volunteers from a dozen alien species who had sworn to protect humanity's future, gave up their own identities, their homeworlds, their very existence in the galactic community. They became ghosts, operating from the shadows, maintaining the fiction of humanity's extinction while nurturing the seeds of its eventual return. The child carries more than just human genetics, Tamara observed, her ethereal form brightening. With concern, the neural patterns. She has access to the archive. Humanity's final gift to the galaxy, a complete repository of their knowledge, culture, and history, encoded into the genetic structure of each preserved human. When humanity chose extinction over slavery, they ensured their legacy would survive, in living memory, which makes her infinitely valuable, Nexus 7 calculated, and infinitely dangerous. If the hegemony discovers what she carries, Grimjaw's growl rumbled through the chamber. They would dissect her neural tissue cell by cell, extract every memory, every piece of knowledge, the locations of all our stations, the identities of every Watcher, the truth about Earth's fate. Corinth felt the weight of 500 years pressing down on him. They had kept the secret so long, sacrificed so much. Entire Watcher bloodlines had died, maintaining humanity's hidden preservation sites. His own species, the Valdorians, had declared him and his followers extinct rather than admit their involvement in the conspiracy. The exposure creates opportunities as well as dangers, he said finally. Dr. Valdez is a xenolinguist specializing in extinct cultures. Her research could provide perfect cover for deeper contact. And the security chief, Jackson Thorne? Former military, good service record, but no family connections. He could be ... educated. Tamara's form pulsed with worry. The risk is enormous. One mistake, one surveillance algorithm catching an anomaly. The greater risk is leaving her isolated, Corinth replied. She is 17 standard years old, trained in preservation protocols, but never prepared for true exposure. Without guidance, she will make errors that expose us all. The vote was unanimous, as it had been for 5 centuries. The Watchers would act, but as Corinth began composing messages to sleeper agents throughout the galaxy, he wondered if they were finally approaching the moment they had both prepared for and dreaded, the time when humanity would have to choose between eternal hiding and the terrible risk of reclaiming their place among the stars. The last human daughter was no longer alone. The question was whether that would save her or doom them all. The hunt begins. Director Voskane never smiled. But today his lips curved into something resembling satisfaction as he reviewed the intercepted data streams in his private office. Aboard the dreadnought Sovereign's Edge, the Hegemony Intelligence Division's most ruthless operative had built his career on finding secrets that others wanted buried. And this particular secret promised to reshape the balance of galactic power. Run the linguistic analysis again, he commanded his personal AI. A military-grade consciousness housed in a sleek obsidian interface. Focus on tonal variations and neural response patterns. Processing complete, Director, the AI responded. In its neutral tenor, match probability for authentic pre-Exodus human Latin, 97.4%. Genetic markers from long-range biometric scans indicate significant anomalies consistent with extinct human physiology. Kane's augmented fingers drummed against his desk, each digit enhanced with neural processing cores that allowed him to interface directly with intelligence. Networks across 17 sectors, the implications were staggering. If humanity had somehow survived their supposed extinction, the political ramifications would be catastrophic. 3 major wars had been justified by the human tragedy. Entire species had been granted refugee status based on claims of human persecution. The hegemony itself had risen to power partly by positioning itself as the guardian against another human-style military expansion. Sir, his aide, a nervous centauri named Kel, appeared at his office threshold. Priority communications from Sector Command, the Ethereal Council, and Kel's tentacles quivered with anxiety. The Syndicate. Kane's enhanced vision processed the information stream simultaneously. Everyone was talking about Epsilon 7, though none of them yet understood what they had found. Bureaucrats demanding explanations for increased surveillance activity, scientists requesting access to xenolinguistic research data. And most troubling of all, criminal organizations mobilizing assets toward the remote mining station. How did word spread so quickly? Kane mused, though he already suspected the answer. Unknown, sir. But intelligence indicates at least 4 separate factions are now aware of the anomaly. The Merchant Princes have dispatched a stealth frigate. The Reformed Church of Stellar Unity believes they've found evidence of divine intervention. The Syndicate... Kel's voice dropped to a whisper. They're sending the Hunter. The Hunter. Even Kane felt a chill at the name. Reignite, the galaxy's most expensive assassin, whose cybernetic modifications made him more machine than organic. If the criminal syndicate was deploying their ultimate weapon, they believed this discovery was worth any price. Mobilize Task Force 7, Kane ordered. Full stealth configuration. We reach Epsilon 7 before anyone else. But even as his ship prepared for departure, Kane knew he was already behind. His enhanced neural processors had detected subtle anomalies in the galactic communication grid, ghostly data shadows that suggested someone else was moving pieces on the board. Someone with resources and capabilities that operated outside normal intelligence networks. 3 hours into their journey, the first reports began arriving. The research vessel Mendel's Dream had vanished from its filed flight plan. Security Chief Thorn on Epsilon 7 had reported routine equipment malfunctions that conveniently disabled most surveillance systems. And most intriguingly, several alien refugees had been quietly transferred off-station to better facilities, transfers that left no paper trail. Someone is cleaning house, Kane realized. This isn't random. There's an organized response. His investigation revealed fragments of a larger picture. Financial records showing centuries-old trust funds still making payments to obscure research facilities. archaeological permits for extinct civilization studies that led to empty space, coordinates. Shipping manifests for biological supplies, disappearing into sectors that officially contain nothing but dead stars. Director Kell's voice carried new urgency. Long-range sensors detect multiple vessels converging on Epsilon 7. AT, 12 hours. Kane smiled his cold smile and activated his ship's combat protocols. Then we'd better arrive first. And Kell? Yes, sir? Prepare containment units. Whatever we find there, it's not leaving with anyone else. Meanwhile, in the depths of space between systems, ancient machinery stirred to life. Watcher stations that had remained dormant for decades activated emergency protocols. Sleeper agents embedded in dozens of alien societies received activation codes they had hoped never to use. And deep in the hidden archives of Haven Station, Elder Corinth made the most difficult decision of his 500-year existence. Initiate Protocol Omega, he commanded. All preservation sites, all operatives, all assets. The long silence ends now. Across the galaxy, the descendants of humanity's guardians began to move. Some were alien species who had honored ancient oaths. Others were human bloodlines so deeply hidden they had forgotten their own origins. All of them understood that centuries of careful planning now balanced on the survival of one 17-year-old girl who carried the genetic memory of a dead civilization. The hunt for the last human had begun. But those seeking her were about to discover that humanity's guardians had spent 500 years preparing for this moment, and they would not give up their charge without a fight that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. As Task Force 7 dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Epsilon system, Kane's enhanced vision detected the silhouettes of ships already in position, vessels whose configurations didn't match any known military or civilian designs. Game had changed. And for the first time in his career, Director Voss Kane wasn't certain he was holding the winning hand. The last Testament Sarashi had chosen the name herself. Abandoning the clinical designation, Kiranine stood in the center of Epsilon's main assembly hall, no longer hiding beneath her refugee's cloak. The station around her hummed with barely contained energy as dozens of ships held position in the surrounding space, each representing a different faction's desperate hunger for what she carried. She was no longer the frightened girl who had fled the Kepler collapse. The neural archive embedded in her genetic structure had finally fully awakened, flooding her consciousness with the memories and knowledge of 10,000 ancestors. She spoke now not just as herself, but as the living repository of humanity's true legacy. "You want to know what happened to my people?" she said, her voice carrying clearly through the station's communication systems to every ship in the blockade. "You want to dissect me, study me, claim me as proof of your various theories and ambitions? But first, you will hear the truth." Director Kane's enhanced features twitched with impatience aboard his command vessel. "Secure the asset. Deploy. Boarding teams." Belay that order, came a new voice across all channels. Captain Ria Santos stepped into the assembly hall beside Zara Woman, whose dark skin and classical features marked her as unmistakably human. Behind her came others: Dr. Pavel Kozlov, his beard gray with age, but his eyes sharp with intelligence. Commander Yuki Tanaka, her military bearing unchanged despite centuries of hiding. A dozen others, all bearing the genetic markers that should have been extinct. "Impossible, breathe," Dr. Myra Valdez, watching from her position near the station's communication array. The preservation records indicated only scattered individuals, ... Zara smiled sadly. The Watchers preserved more than they revealed, even to themselves. "My people did not become extinct, Dr. Valdez. We became something else entirely." The holographic display in the center of the hall activated, showing images that made the assembled factions' representatives gasp in recognition and horror. Earth, green and blue and beautiful, not the scarred wasteland of historical records, but a thriving world hidden behind planetary cloaking technology that made it invisible to long-range sensors. "The Three Empire War never reached Earth," Zara continued, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "The destruction, the orbital bombardment, the ecological collapse, all of it was staged. My ancestors chose to disappear rather than be conquered, but they did not choose extinction. Captain Santos stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of hidden command structures. For 500 years, we have watched from the shadows as the galaxy tore itself apart, fighting over resources and territory. We have seen species enslaved, worlds burned, entire civilizations reduced to memory. The hegemony, the syndicate, the merchant princes, all of them, built their power on the lie of humanity's weakness. Director Kane's voice crackled over the communication channel, elaborate deceptions. Even if humans survived, their numbers would be insignificant compared to modern galactic powers. Zara's laugh carried no humor. Would they? Archive display. Current population estimates. New holographic displays materialized, showing star charts with thousands of pinpoints of light. Each one represented a hidden human settlement, orbital habitats disguised as asteroid fields, underground cities on supposedly dead worlds, entire populations living within other species societies under genetic camouflage, 47 billion. Humans across 1,200 hidden settlements, Dr. Kozlov announced, his scientist precision cutting through the stunned silence. Our reproductive advantage during the hiding centuries has been significant. Elder Corinth's ancient voice joined the transmission from Haven Station. The Watchers kept this secret even from each other. Each believed they guarded the last. Remnants. None knew the true scope of the preservation protocol. The implications hit the assembled factions like a physical blow. If humanity had not only survived but thrived in secret, if they commanded resources and technology developed over 5 centuries of hidden advancement, the neural archive each of us carries contains more than cultural memory, Zara continued. It holds technological innovations, scientific discoveries, military strategies, advances made by a civilization that had the luxury of 500 years to develop without interference. We have been watching your wars, learning from your mistakes, preparing for the day when we would choose to reveal ourselves. Jackson Thorne, still reeling from revelations that had shattered his understanding of galactic history, found his voice. Why now? Why reveal yourselves? Zara's expression grew grave. Because something is coming that threatens not just humanity, but every sapient species in the galaxy. The quantum resonance cascade that destroyed the Kepler systems was not natural stellar collapse. It was a weapon test. The archive's holographic displays shifted, showing deep space observations of regions where entire star systems had simply vanished, leaving behind twisted space-time that defied known physics. The Devourers return, Captain Santos said simply. The same extragalactic force that drove our ancestors to first venture beyond Earth's solar system? They have been testing our defenses, probing our technological capabilities. The divided galaxy they see today appears weak, fractured DZ prey. But a galaxy that includes a hidden human civilization with 5 centuries of advanced development, supported by loyal watcher species and integrated sleeper populations. Dr. Tanaka added, that presents a very different strategic equation. Director, Kane's voice carried a new note of calculation. You're proposing an alliance. Hidden humanity emerges to help defend against this external threat. Not proposing, Zara corrected, demanding. The time for secrets ends now. Humanity reclaims its place in galactic civilization, or we all fall separately to forces that view organic life as mere resources to be consumed. As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding across every ship in the blockade. Long-range sensors detected massive distortions at the edge of the system, reality itself bending as something. Vast and hungry began to emerge from the void. Between galaxies, the Devourers had found them. And suddenly, the question was no longer whether humanity deserved to reclaim its place among the stars, but whether any of them would survive long enough for that choice to matter. Zara looked out at the assembled representatives of a dozen species and factions, her young face carrying the wisdom of ages. The last testament of humanity is not written in our extinction, but in our choice to stand with you against the darkness. The question is, will you stand with us? The galaxy's answer would determine the fate of all organic life.